There's a 45-second countdown until everybody's returned. All right, welcome back, everyone. All breakout rooms have now ended, and everybody should be back to the main session.
Okay, thank you very much, Nick. One of the things that I neglected to mention at the outset when I talked about the staff, uh, I should have mentioned, and so I shall now, that one of the other places that we saw the staff really moving forward during this time of the pandemic and doing a huge amount of adaptation and reworking is the camp, the youth program. The camp program, we determined early on that we really could not run the camp in the way we had traditionally run it. And Ingrid and Karen went to work and started brainstorming what we could do and what we could provide for the young people of the Diocese of Utah. And so because of that, they mounted the single day camps as well as overnight camps hiking, where we could manage to do the social distancing and the safety protocols that we needed to do. And they were also able to consult with health experts on the best way to do things as well. So we were prepared to move forward with that. And the reason I bring that up is the Diocese of Utah is one of only a few camps across the Episcopal Church that did anything during the summer camp season. And I hold that out to you because it's because of the good work of Karen and Ingrid who stitched this all together. And because we made the decision early on, we were able to do something that was new and will help us as we move forward in time because it opens up possibilities that we had not considered before. So I want to make sure you know how grateful I am to Karen and Ingrid and all the people who helped at camp this summer because we were able to do something which if we had waited, we would not have been able to do. So thank you. Now, as provided in our rules of order, all nominations for elective office were to have been submitted no later than 5 business days prior to the beginning of convention. We are unaware of any late filed nominations. So therefore, I am pleased to introduce the 2020 nominees for diocesan office. For the disciplinary board and the clergy order, the Venerable Robert Shoup, who is the Archdeacon of the diocese. I express my gratitude to those who will continue on the disciplinary board, the Reverend Libby Hunter, Ms. Daniela Lee, Mr. Jim Palmer, and the Reverend David Sackerson, Jeff Shields Esquire, John Schaefer Jr. Esquire, Church Attorney, Tony Marie Sutliff Esquire, who is the intake officer, William Downs Jr. Esquire, who is an intake officer, and Ms. Susan Furka, the clerk. Those whose terms have ended, and we give grateful thanks for the service, the Reverend Charles Robinson, St. Luke's Park City, and the Venerable Robert Shoup, who now will continue on, and Treasurer David Lingo, who is the treasurer and will continue on. There are no elections to diocesan council other than regional representatives for this year's council. And those who have already been nominated to serve as regional representatives on diocesan council are For the Salt Lake region, Mr. Nick Ellingson from All Saints and Mr. Don Wood of St. Luke's. For the Eastern and Southeastern region, Ms. Norella Pilling of Ascension St. Matthews and Ms. Connie Witt of the Episcopal Church of St. Francis. For the Southern region, at this time, we do not have candidates or none were received before the deadline. What will happen, of course, as was announced earlier, that at the end of this business session, the regional meetings will be held, and at which time you'll elect, and the Southern region will meet to determine a person to stand for the council and to be elected to council. I express my gratitude to those who will continue on the Diocesan Council, the Reverend Chase Browning, Ms. Terry Champ Major, the Very Reverend Tyler Doherty, Mr. Russ Pack, the Reverend Canon Pablo Ramos, and to give grateful thanks to Dr. Ron Kastner, who has completed 2 terms on council, Ms. Carol Ann Mitchell from Grace Church in St. George, who unfortunately is moving and so cannot continue on council, and Mr. Don Phillips of Ascension St. Matthews, who likewise is relocating or has relocated this time to Arizona. And Don has served well and faithfully throughout the years. Carol Ann will miss her terribly, and Dr. Ron Kastner for your insightful and wonderful service on council. Thank you so very much. In the order for the standing committee, we have 1 in the clergy order and 1 in the lay order. The clergy nominee is the Reverend Isabel Gonzalez, who filled an unexpired term and is eligible for election to serve a full term. And at this point in time, we did not have a lay nominee for standing committee. I express then my thanks to those who will continue on the standing committee, the Reverend Gabriel Atem, the Reverend Lynn Briggs, Mr. Kurt Cook, Ms. Debbie Kawada. And I acknowledge those whose terms are coming to an end. The Reverend Isabel Gonzalez, although she is standing for election, and Ms. Nancy Tanner. Nancy Tanner has served as the president of standing committee. And Nancy has she's been marvelous, just exceptionally good, gentle, organized, and always completely straightforward and willing to speak up, and doing so in a manner which always commands attention, and at the same time always imparts care, and wants the very best for the Diocese of Utah. So thank you very much. I now call upon the parliamentarian, Canon Stephen Hutchinson, Esquire. Steve.
Okay. Bishop Hayashi, I note that there are no contested races for certain elections. Therefore, I move that the secretary be instructed to cast a unanimous ballot on behalf of the convention to elect each of the nominees to the office for which they were nominated.
Okay, the motion is in order, and has it been seconded? I don't know if it's been seconded. So
It appears we have some votes yes for seconds.
Okay, I see a hand. Deanna Anderson, I see put a hand up for a second. So it has been moved and seconded. Any discussion on this? Please make that known. Okay, and there is a hand raised. Ron Kastner.
One moment, I will. There we go.
Okay. There are contested elections in regions.
Yes.
I assume that is not affected by Steve's motion.
Thank you. That is correct, because the regions elect their representatives. It's not a decision of the whole convention. Yeah. I see another hand raised of Judy Atherton.
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Nick or Craig, do we have any other hands raised?
None that I can see.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, all in favor of the motion, and you understand the motion then to do a vote of acclamation, which normally we do a raising of hands, but if we're physically present, but this time, if you're in favor of the motion, signify by saying voting yes.
Full. All right.
With,
Bishop, it appears that we have 96 yes, no, no.
okay, how many people are actually entitled to vote? We have that number?
100
That would be the,
108.
108. Okay, so some have not cast their vote at this point in time. However,
I received 3 additional, so that makes us 98.
okay. So at this point in time, then the chair will say that the motion has carried. Thank you very much. I now call upon and recognize Mr. Brandon Birmingham Esquire, the chair of the Resolutions Committee, to present the resolutions on behalf of the Resolutions Committee.
Okay, thank you, Bishop Hayashi. The Resolutions Committee is tasked by Diocesan Canon with reviewing all resolutions submitted to the convention for proper form, consistency with the Constitution and canons of the Episcopal Church and the Diocese of Utah, and consistency with diocesan policies. There are 4 resolutions for consideration at this convention, which you'll find posted on the convention website. The Resolutions Committee has reviewed each of these resolutions and has found that each meets all of the criteria I just mentioned. I will take up each resolution in order and will refer each to Bishop Hayashi as president of the convention for discussion and submission to a vote. And one brief procedural item I did want to bring up under Rule 7.0 of the Rules of Order, because these motions are being brought by a committee, no second is required. So on behalf of the Resolutions Committee, I will move adoption of resolution number 1, which is the resolution sponsored by the Reverend Michael Carney and Mr. Forrest Cooch.
Okay, and so that has been moved. It is the resolution from number 1 from Mr. Michael Carney, Reverend Michael Carney and Mr. Forrest Cooch. Do we have anybody that would speak to this motion? I hope that you've all, I see a hand raised. The chair recognizes Mr. Michael, I'm sorry, Michael, the Reverend Michael Carney from St. Elizabeth's and White Rocks.
Thank you, Bishop. Just being a simple thing that recognizing the original people of our state, of our nation, of our individual communities, taking the time to do that is just a reminder of our relationship to the broader sense of God's creation and the human community. It's not going to directly change anything in dramatic ways, but I think it reflects changes that are going on within us as people and as a church community. So I encourage us to do this positively, and I know that Forrest is happy to consult with any congregation or other group that would like help with the wording of this.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other discussion? Yes,
Bishop, we have one more hand raised.
yes, thank you very much. I see that. The chair recognizes Ann Campbell then. Okay, she should be unmuted.
She should be able to unmute now. There we
Okay.
go.
I just wanted to say, when I read this resolution, I was appreciative and moved to that, Michael, that you would offer this and that we would we would participate as a church community in honoring particularly those who are so often simply ignored. So I heartily endorse this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak for this motion or against this motion?
We see no more hands.
Okay, I see no more hands. As stated by Brandon Birmingham, Esquire, there's no need for a second because it arises out of the committee itself. So then all in favor of resolution number 1, land acknowledgement, moved by the Reverend Michael Carney and Mr. Forrest Kutch, please signify by voting yes or voting no.
I
Okay.
have received 4 additional votes via chat.
So 105.
105. Thank you. The motion carries with 105 in favor, and there were no nays. Okay. Brandon?
Okay, thank you, Bishop. We'll move on to resolution number 2, which is sponsored by the Convention Planning Committee. And on behalf of the Resolutions Committee, I move adoption of resolution number 2.
Okay, resolution number 2. Let me see. And do we have a person to speak to this resolution, please? Okay,
Bishop, Kristen Madden of St. Paul's has raised the hand.
okay, thank you.
I'm not speaking for or against this resolution. Would it be helpful if you could do a screen share of the resolutions as we are dealing with them? Just to reference, depending on the size of your computer monitor, it may not be easy to read them while we are discussing them. Thank you.
Bishop, may I answer that?
Yes, please.
It probably would be easiest if it's possible for you. They are listed on the diocesan or the convention website, and you can cover your screen if you just start a new window, and you will see it in full screen then, rather than just as a little tiny part of the square. So you would go to diocesanconvention2020.org or the link from our diocesan website, and then it says resolutions, and then click on that, and you would have a full screen that can be scrolled. Do you see that?
I sent a direct link to this resolution in the chat as well, if that is helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I see that we have other hands raised at this time. So David Egan Evans, please.
Yeah, I was wondering about the restriction to the standing committee to 2 terms with a 1-year lapse period in between if they wanted a 3rd term. Is that new? And the main question is, if not, what motivates that restriction?
Good, thank you. Do we have a response from the committee or from the Canon Chancellor?
If I may, this provision allowing for a 2nd term follows the similar provision that was adopted a couple of years ago for diocesan council to allow for a 2nd term. And I mean, for a lot of the same reasons, the people get on there and they, in a year or so, they kind of learn the role and develop a little portfolio of expertise about the diocese, and then we lose them. So the gist of this argument is that allowing for a 2nd 3-year term, which is subject to election, of course, is for the benefit of the diocese as well as perhaps for the individual, but more for the diocese. But the diocesan council already has this provision in another part of the canons.
Thank you. Then at this time, I would go to Reverend Canon Pablo Ramos, the San Esteban St. Stephen's.
Yes, Bishop, if I am reading correctly, resolution, if we pass this resolution, standing committee members will be able to run for a second term. But resolution number 4 does not address this change on the canons. So I just wondering what will happen if we pass resolution 2 and then we pass resolution number 4.
Okay, thank you. Canon Chancellor Hutchinson, any response?
All right. When we make canonical amendments in convention, I should remind the convention that they are effective January 1 of the following year. And during that time, when we're publishing the journal and we're preparing for a new edition of the canons, we reconcile any editorial apparent inconsistencies that might appear in these resolutions. So if there's any inconsistency with resolution 4, that would be resolved that way. It's part of the problem with the delay in the convention is that these resolutions were prepared 8-10 months ago, and so they're not as fresh in our minds as they could be. But I'm not aware. Is there a part, Canon Ramos, where and specifically in resolution 4, you think there's a
Resolution number 4 on line 48.
I don't know, I'll have to work with the resolutions committee on that, but I think they can be resolved and reconciled.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then we have Jean Norman. So Jean, if you would, there we go.
Sorry, Bishop. I am about as lay gets, and this is my first time ever reading the canons. So it would be extremely helpful to me if somebody would just summarize what is changing, because I'm looking at resolution 2 now, and I see red underline, and I assume these are new things, but I have no clue what it replaces. And so just a very brief summary would be very helpful to the lay among us.
Okay, thank you. Ken Hutchinson, would you please address the question of what would actually change because of this?
Well, I'm sorry that I couldn't hear the question, but if I think, as I understand it, the question was still about the second 3-year term for standing committee. Is that right?
I believe I could hear her well. It was generally just explaining how this would change for people who aren't familiar with what it was previously.
Well, it's kind of an omnibus resolution because it deals with several different parts of the canons. And it could be that the canons committee that developed the resolution should really address this, but we occasionally, every few years, have resolutions of this nature where we're cleaning up the canons or bringing them more in line with more current practice for the respective dioceses in their governing bodies and in their procedures. In ours, we've spoken about the standing committee terms. Other parts of it are just almost grammatical updates, and in some cases changes in title for officers of the diocese. the clarification, for instance, in 24.2 on the chief financial officer was that it's, as a matter of practice, the chief financial officer, not the treasurer, that makes sure that all of our insurances are in order and kept current. The old canons seem to at least suggest that that was an obligation of the treasurer, who's, after all, a volunteer who's not in the office and doesn't really have access to ready access to such files. In some cases, it's reorganizing and reformatting the canons so that they make more sense and they're more easily read. So one of the things that happens after a convention, when in preparation for the effective date of new or amended canons, is that we'll publish, typically in October or November, an updated full version of the canons as amended, so that when you read them through, you more easily can find how one provision of the canons relates to another. I'm not sure if that's really responsive to the question again, since I couldn't hear it very well.
Bishop, I can speak to Canon 21.2.3 and how this amendment modifies the existing canon. The existing canon requires a member of the standing committee to take at least 1 year off between two terms. That's the way it currently reads. And so this new provision just gets rid of that and allows one re-election, two consecutive terms. So that's how this specific amendment changes the currently existing canon.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Steve. And as noted, it brings the standing committee in line with the canon regarding diocesan council as well. Okay, do we have any other? Okay, Dominic DeCaria.
Thank you, Bishop. I just have one question. I'm looking through the explanation section at the end of the resolution, and I appreciate the brief summary there as to what's changing. I'm seeing a note to update Appendix 31.1 to update regions to add Spirit of the Desert. Seems like a minor change and perfectly fine, but I am not, I hope I'm not just missing this, but I'm not seeing that change in the resolution. I'm only seeing it in the explanations.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for pointing that out. Canon Chancellor Hutchinson or Brandon Birmingham?
I think that Brandon may need to answer that, because that really is coming from the group that drafted this. But if that's a editing problem, we'll make sure that's corrected.
Sorry, Steve, I would say too that that's also an appendix. So there's not a specific canon being revised there. It's an appendix to the canons that's being changed.
Yeah, it's not actually, that's true. It's it shows up actually in the directory of the diocese, where we list the regions of the diocese. So it would be appropriate to make sure that that's available to everyone as well.
Thank you. Do you understand the answer? It doesn't really change anything.
So Spirit of the Desert would be participating in the southern region, in the Caucasus and so forth, and as they have been. And I think it was just an oversight that they might have not been listed in the last edition of that part of the directory.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I see a hand from Deanna Anderson.
Response to the last comment, it does show up in the fourth resolution specifically for Appendix 31.3. So I don't know if it helps later.
Okay, thank you for that point of information, Deanna. Okay, I see a hand up with Vanessa Cato, Good Shepherd, Reverend Vanessa Cato.
I just wondered whether it would be helpful for people who have not attended before to know that the changes are highlighted in red in the resolutions, and those things that are in black are things that remain as they were before.
Okay, thank you. A hand from the Reverend Kurt Wiesner, St. Paul's.
Thank you, Bishop. Yeah, I hesitate to ask this simply because I think that it makes sense to have full 3-year term that can potentially be redone, in part because I agree with the reasoning, but this was presented as a clean copy, something that is cleaning up sort of discrepancies in language, whereas this seems to be a change. That seems like a different thing. So I wonder about its placement in this resolution in this case. And I'd like to hear a little more of that.
Okay, thank you. I think Brandon then, if you could.
Yeah, it's a little bit of, sorry, Bishop. Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I mean, if you look at some of the changes, where there's only 1 or 2 words being changed, I would call those essentially cleanup. And I think really it's maybe a question of semantics. I mean, the resolutions are here to be discussed and voted on, whether we call them cleanup or something else. They are what they are, and so it doesn't change the substance of what we're discussing or voting on in any way.
All right, it probably should have, calling it a clean then maybe wasn't the best choice. I guess that's what I'm saying.
It's a little bit of both, I would say. There's certainly some cleanup in here, and then there's some more substantive stuff here, if you want to call it that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. I see a hand is Ron Kastner. Unmute yourself.
Oh, I have to unmute myself.
There you go. Oh, unmute yourself again.
Am I all right?
Yes.
Okay. Would it be simpler to extract that segment dealing with the changing of the terms on the standing committee and vote on that separately? Or would that make folks happier rather than leaving it within the general cleanup resolution? I mean, I think it could all be done together, but if people are concerned specifically about the standing committee, somebody could move to extract it and vote on it separately.
The motion would be, if the group feels that that's necessary, the motion would be to divide the resolution and to separate it out as a separate motion to be voted on, which requires a motion to divide and with a specific explanation of what you're trying to divide, and then people can speak to the question of whether or not to divide, vote on that, and then vote on the amended resolution if necessary.
Okay, thank you. A hand went up with Sandra Corp, Grace St. George.
Thank you, Bishop. I was on the committee, and I think perhaps maybe people are misunderstanding something that was put on the diocesan website next to the list of each resolution that says the word clean. That's the only place that I see the word clean. It's not in the explanations necessarily or the resolutions themselves. I think that there really isn't a problem with including changes, and if there's a specific objection to something in it, then an amendment could be proposed to eliminate that if people are opposed to the change. But the word clean, I'm not sure where that came from in the listing of the resolutions. I'm not sure what it was intended to mean. If it just means this is a clean copy, or if somebody chose to call it cleanup, if that was misleading, then I think the committee would apologize. But I'm looking at the resolutions themselves, and I don't see anything that says this is purely to clean up typos or anything. There are substantive changes in all of the next 3 resolutions, and so people should read those if they have concerns about there being changes and ask questions about the specific changes. And that's my comment as a committee member.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. Ken and Hutchinson, how much time do we have allotted for discussion and debate on a resolution?
Oh, we probably shot right past that. Let me look to the Resolutions. Nominations. I'm sorry, I can't find that right now, but my memory is that it's no more than 10 minutes unless it's extended by vote of the convention.
Okay, we've had 16 minutes total so far on this. But we don't have an official read, so therefore I'm going to allow this to continue on for Kurt and David, and then call an end to it. Okay, Kurt, the Reverend Kurt Wiesner.
I don't think this needs to be separated. I just think that we just need to be had to have been clear of it coming there, and that all the resolutions are contain new material and some are procedural and such. It seems to me that it can stay as is.
Okay, thank you. David.
Yeah, to confirm that, to Dr. Kastner's point, let's vote on it as it is. And if there's concern, then we can separate it if the resolution's shot down as is.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then at this point in time, I declare that debate on this resolution is ended. And I call for a vote. All in favor of resolution number 2 signify by voting yes. Those opposed vote no. Okay, I see that we have at this point in time, we have 95 who voted yes and 6 who voted no. Do we have any coming in on the text, please? Nick?
We do. We have 6 additional yes votes from people who are sharing computers.
Okay, thank you. Therefore, I declare that with 106 in favor, the resolution number 2 passes. Okay, resolution number 3.
Thank you, Bishop. I've got a brief procedural note on this resolution. Because it calls for an amendment to the diocesan constitution, Article 18 of the Constitution requires majority approval at this convention, and then 2/3 approval of each house, lay and clergy, and the bishop at the next convention in order for this resolution to be adopted. So if the resolution passes here, it'll be voted again at the next convention before it becomes effective. So with that being said, on behalf of the Resolutions Committee, I move adoption of resolution number 3, and I'm available to give any clarification that's needed as well as sponsor.
Okay, proceed with that. A short explanation, please, then, Brandon.
Okay, so really what this is designed to do is to lower the quorum threshold for clergy, both at convention and at election of a bishop. Currently for convention under Article 9 of the Constitution, it requires a majority of the clergy in the diocese to be present, which is 50% plus 1. On Article 15 pertaining to election of a bishop, the current clergy requirement is 2/3 of the clergy entitled to vote be in attendance. There's a little bit of an explanation at the bottom of the motion of the resolution to discuss the reasoning for lowering those thresholds to 1/3 in the case of Article 9 and 1/3 also in the case of Article 15. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I think it's fairly self-explanatory.
Okay, thank you. And once again, a constitutional change requires that it pass in 2 conventions. So this is the first reading of this. Okay, do I have any hands? Christy. Okay, Christy. So if you would change your name when you get the chance to Christy, your full name and which congregation you're at, please.
Oh, absolutely. Christy Moody. I'm with St. Paul Salt Lake. And I will change that after my question. So I'm not familiar with how many clergy are currently in the diocese. And so I'm curious to know what fraction do we have here today? And how many clergy would 1/3 be?
I don't have that number off the top of my head. We'll need to get that information researched, please.
Yes, we had 33 clergy present today, I believe, based on our original vote.
And the total number of clergy in the Diocese of Utah, off the top of my head, I can't say what that is.
I can retrieve that number.
56.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll wait for that, but Tarn? St. Mary's. Okay.
Hi. I was just, I had a question on the wording. Well, the wording's sort of vague. It could be taken as 1/3 of the 50, the way it's written. He clarified it, Brendan clarified it, but I just want to know if we could make the wording more clear.
Are you proposing an amendment?
Yeah, I guess I am. An amendment to basically make the wording more clear, so you can't take it as 1/3 of the 50%.
Well, there's really no 50% once we change. Where are you getting the 50%? Because that's really the substance of the amendment, is to remove the 50% plus one requirement from the clergy quorum requirement and make it 1/3.
It says 1/3 of the clergy entitled to seat, voice, and vote in the convention, and lay delegates from a majority. So the way it's written, it could be taken, if you don't know what the intent was, that it could be 1/3 of the majority.
It's the majority that refers to the lay delegates. It's 1/3 of the clergy under the Constitution eligible to vote, and a majority of the lay delegates.
Yeah, we're talking about two classes here. Clergy is the 1/3, and then the lay delegates is the majority, or 50% plus one.
Okay, so it's just makes sense.
And keep in mind, the clergy include retired clergy, which is one of the reasons for the consideration for lowering the quorum amount.
Yes. Okay, thank you. I think, who was second with the hand raised? I didn't track that, but I think Kristen Madden was next.
Thank you. Kristen Madden, St. Paul, Salt Lake City. I am against this proposed amendment. We are a geographically large diocese with a small number of worshiping congregations, and lowering the participation of canonically resident clergy would be a disservice to the wisdom of clergy, in my opinion.
Thank you. At this point in time, we moved, I think the next person who had been in there was the Reverend Carol Marsh.
Yeah, Bishop, I would like to propose an amendment.
Thank you.
And to change it from 1/3 of the clergy to 50% of the clergy. I agree with Kristen, but it seems to me that particularly in the when there's an election of a bishop who is responsible both for retired and active clergy, that to only have 1/3 of the clergy be responsible for the election is not sufficient. I guess at this point, I also think we need to change the term active clergy, because many of the retired clergy are really active in congregations and carry on a considerable amount of work of the church. So my amendment is that we change the 1/3 to at least 50%.
Okay, and so that has been moved as an amendment. Do we have a second? Okay, I don't.
We have votes for yes for seconds.
Okay, so we have it has been moved and seconded. Okay, so now then we have the any discussion on the amendment?
I've got a question. Are we talking about making both Article 9 and Article 15 one half? or just Article 15, you'd express some concern about the election of a bishop. That would just be Article 15. So I would just have a question as to whether we're amending just one or both.
It's both.
In which case there wouldn't need to be an amendment to number 9, because the number 9 currently requires it. Well, it currently reads a majority, 50% plus 1 is the way that constitutional section currently reads, number 9.
Bishop, we have a point of order
Okay.
from Deanna Anderson from St. Stephen's.
Thank you. Point of order, Deanna Anderson.
Could we have the line numbers? Because I was thinking the line 14, election shall require a majority 50% plus 1. And so I'm lost on the 1/3 and the 50%.
Thank you. Let me go back to Carol. When you said you suggest the amendment, which line were you talking about? Article 9, I think, to clarify Article 15. You said both.
Bishop, but I actually was referring to line 13 of resolution 3.
Okay, thank you. So your amendment really was for line 13 of the resolution then?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
But I didn't say it, but I also mean line 4 and 13.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that is the amendment. Do we have people who wish to speak to the amendment? We only have the amendment. Everybody lower their hand again now, down. Now, because now we can say who speaks to the amendment itself. Now, to the amendment. Okay, the Reverend Kurt Wiesner.
Thank you, Bishop. I find both the amendment and the original is going to be very difficult without knowing the total number of active clergy and retired clergy, because that's what this sort of hinges on. Active clergy, my understanding, and clergy who are responsible, the clergy in charge of a congregation or mission, are required to be at convention, whereas retired clergy are not required to be at convention. So if the 1/3 number represents only that active group, I could see why you have to have the bar, quote, lower, because as is, retired clergy aren't necessarily involved in the life of the ministry of the diocese. Many are, but they don't necessarily have to be. Without these numbers, it's going to be really difficult to sort this out.
Okay, do we have, I apologize for not having those numbers. We're still gathering that actual figure. I can't.
Can I speak to the practicalities of this amendment too? It might be helpful.
Please.
This became a little bit of an issue at the convocation for the election of the nominating committee, as I recall, which was several months ago. But under the current requirement, I believe that weren't we a little touch and go, Steve, if I remember correctly, on getting a clergy quorum? I don't remember the specific numbers.
Yeah, we got to within a couple of days and did not have registrations that would equal a quorum. Would have had to cancel the convention. And when you're talking about, as Kurt points out, you're talking about people who are not required to be there. And that means we've got people who, due to age or medical condition or other things, can't easily be there. Or as some retired clergy have taken the position in the past, that since they're not actively involved and responsible for any particular ministry, they expressed the view that they did not feel like they should participate in a decision for which they were not going to be direct participants in the outcome. I mean, people had different views of all that. I'm not weighing in on that, but there are, I would say, as a chancellor and aware of the chancellor's experience across the country somewhat, there have been a number of dioceses that have lowered the threshold quorum requirements because there are so many more retired clergy now than there were 20 years ago. And they can't get that many people to be from that retired group in particular to be guaranteed to attend the convention. And so sometimes they would not be able to make the quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. And then let's see, we have Carol Marsh. Carol?
Yeah, Bishop, I guess I'm partly reacting to the fact that historically in the diocese, there, when you were elected, the retired clergy could not vote. We were specifically included. And my concern about all of this is that the bishop is responsible for the pastoral care of all the clergy, and that therefore the retired clergy should be eligible to vote for the bishop and the ongoing life of the diocese. I'm speaking as the chaplain to the retired clergy, and I think any resolution that in some way seems to exclude clergy who are retired is problematical.
Okay. May I ask a question, please, of Chancellor Canon Birmingham regarding this? Does this, it's a point of information, and normally I'd have to remove myself from the head table to be able to do this, but I can't do that with Zoom. Does this in any way disenfranchise retired clergy shift?
I would argue no. I mean, it has no effect at all on their right to vote. All it does is make it easier to attain that quorum threshold. I mean, every conference organizer's worst nightmare is not being able to obtain a quorum. And like I said, just a few months ago, we had a little bit of a scare on that. And so, and I think as Steve mentioned, and as I think the explanatory notes say, this is something that these numbers are numbers that other dioceses have used as well. So there's nothing, I don't think there's anything controversial about the number, but it's designed to just, affect the practicalities of obtaining a quorum for meetings like this.
That's right. I think just to be clear, this is not about entitlement to vote. This is simply about establishing a quorum upon which you can go ahead and convene your convention. And being able to be clear about that. So, I mean, there really are different issues, and maybe more study needs to be done about that. Second thing is it's a constitutional amendment. So it would not be, it would not affect the electing convention next year.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. I don't know what order these came up in. So I'm going
Bishop,
to.
I believe it is from top to bottom is the order. So
Okay.
David is first.
David, thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see if he can.
In support of Carol Marsh's point, but with the resolution 5 being passed, does electronic attendance, is there allowance for that when we can actually meet together? And does that not solve the problem?
Electronic attendance, resolution 5, the special rules of order apply only to this convention, but every convention has the opportunity to adopt special rules of order. So it would be conceivable that in a future convention, election convention or otherwise, there could be a special rule of order to take into account the particular circumstances facing the diocese at that time.
Bishop, we have reached 16 minutes on that.
On the amendment?
Yeah, it is 16-minute limit on debate.
Okay, thank you. So we have the amendment before us. And so the process would be first to vote on the amendment. And the amendment as such is to change the 1/3 to 50% is my understanding in lines 4 and 13. Is that a correct understanding? Okay, I hearing no one saying it's not. Then I call to vote on the amendment itself. This is only the amendment we are voting on. All in favor of the amendment signify by voting yes, opposed, vote no. Okay, do we have coming in from the text? Do we have any, Nick?
Bishop, I have received 4 no votes and 2 yes votes.
Okay, so 4 no votes would make a total of 55 no, and their additional 2 votes yes would make it 47. So the amendment fails. So we now move to the consideration on the resolution itself. Okay, and since we've, now let me point of order, Chancellor, is therefore now, we reset the clock, or now because we've expired the time for the voting on this particular resolution, we must move immediately to the vote on the resolution itself.
The time for debate has expired, and unless somebody moves and the convention approves the motion to extend the time by an additional 5 minutes, the time has expired.
Okay, thank you. And I see a hand is up from the Reverend Kurt Wiesner, St. Paul's, please.
This is a point of order question. Stephen, you said that this would not be for the electing, but my read on this is that April would be the second convention this is offered, and we won't be electing in April. So this will, what we do here, potentially affect the election of the bishop, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, for that to happen, the convention would have to adopt additional language to make the constitutional amendment effective upon adoption in April. And right now, that's not in the terminology, because otherwise resolutions changing the canons of the Constitution are effective January 1 of the following year. I know that was the, frankly, you're right, that was the original intent, was to have this effective in time for the election convention. And let me just double check myself on the amendment provision of the Constitution, just to make sure I don't make a mistake about that.
Please do that. That'd be helpful clarification.
Thank you. Now we have 2 additional hands raised, but the debate on the resolution has expired. So if you're not speaking on the resolution, or you're speaking to the resolution, then I will declare that you cannot do that because that's expired. So
I've received a motion via chat to continue discussion. I do not know if that is valid.
Well, no, that is valid.
Right.
That's valid. Okay, so let me see. Was that David who put that?
It was Pamela Palmer, but it seems that David has the same motion.
Okay, so David, please.
I move to extend the time for discussion.
Okay, so we're extending the time for discussion for 5 minutes would be, and do we vote on that? Oh, we have to vote on that.
Would you have a second, Bishop, on that?
Do we have a second on that?
We received one from Pamela Palmer.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have all in favor of extending debate by 5 minutes, please vote yes. Next there, Nick?
I have received 2 votes yes to continue discussion
Okay,
in
so
the chat.
We have 74 in favor of extending the debate by 5 minutes, and we have 30 no. So we will extend the debate by 5 minutes. So if someone would please keep time of that 5 minutes, and then Canon Chancellor Stephen Hutchinson.
Yeah, I have just checked with the Constitution and the canons. Oddly enough, it is in the canons that changes to the canons are effective January 1 of the following year, and there's no correlating provision within the Constitution. So there'd be a pretty good argument that the changes in the Constitution are effective when ratified in the Second Convention.
Thank you. Okay, now then we resume the conversation or debate upon the resolution itself for 5 minutes. And the resolution, again, the amendment doesn't preclude retired clergy from voting. Retired clergy are certainly able to vote for the election of a bishop. That was changed. All right, so now then, continuing on, do we have a person to speak to the, Carol Marsh, the Reverend Carol Marsh?
Actually, it's point of order, Bishop, and I'm not sure. And it's really a question, and I'm not sure how pertinent it really is. But Kurt made the comment that retired clergy were not required to attend convention. And I don't see anywhere in the canons that it says that. I thought all retired all clergy were required to attend.
Thank you. Thank you. The expectation usually is that retired clergy will attend. But many times that's not the case.
I realize that.
Okay. Tom Fisk, the Reverend Tom Fisk. Tom?
Yes. Can you hear me, Bishop?
Yes.
Okay. I would speak to this resolution because it just lowers the amount of clergy to attend the convention, and it doesn't exclude anybody from attending the convention if they're clergy. So I would speak to it and ask that it be passed.
Thank you very much. Okay, hand from Pamela Palmer, please.
Mute. Yes, I would like to speak against this resolution because with our current ability to conduct not only church services and our bishop committee meetings on Zoom, it is possible to not require actual presence at the convention or otherwise to vote. For those who are not able to attend, they could be able to attend a Zoom meeting. So I would like to consider this would allow us to keep the 50% vote.
Thank you. The Reverend Trace Browning.
Yes, I speak in favor of this resolution. Just been in the diocese as long as I have. There have been times when a quorum is just hard to get. And the fact that retired clergy can come to these meetings, Zoom or otherwise, doesn't mean they will, as the Chancellor pointed out, because of health reasons or other things. We don't get the amount of retired clergy that we do with active clergy. And this does not preclude them from coming or voting, but it just lowers that threshold. So I am in favor of this resolution.
Okay, thank you. The Reverend Jenny Tucker. Oh, we lost Jenny.
All right. Yeah, she no longer has her hand raised, but let me see.
Okay, then Doug Sward. Oh, no, she's back on.
Sorry, I just couldn't get unmuted. I think this is just a question, a clarification.
Okay.
Is there anything in the current constitutions and canons that addresses whether or not Zoom attendance is allowed at convention?
The answer is that the special rules of order apply to this only using this. However, any future convention can certainly pass that special rule of order to allow that. And if we go forward, we may at some point in time even write a canon in that addresses that very thing. But the answer at this point is, at this time, no. But that doesn't mean that can't be done, and can be done fairly easily as well.
Thank you, Bishop.
Thank you. Doug Sword from St. James.
There we go. Now I'm unmuted. Yeah, Doug Sword, St. James. I'm against this in that my gut tells me from all the discussions that are going on, it seems like, and this sounds rude, but somehow clergy should have a categorization of active or inactive status chosen by themselves, and then the voting process 50+1 of active. That way retired people can choose to become inactive and not part of the voting if they don't want to.
Excuse me, Doug, but I think that is a misunderstanding. I believe that may be a misunderstanding on your part. The 50+1, I think, applies to the laity.
Right, but I thought it was said that this change, which now says 1/3, it used to say 50+1.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So for side note clarification, when doing these edits for proposals, if we could use the line through on what the old text used to be, it would help a lot of us out that are not familiar with what was and what's intended. So yeah, okay, I'll just leave it with what I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Time has expired on debate.
Thank you. The debate is closed at this point in time. So now we have before you resolution number 3. Thank you. I was confused there. All in favor of resolution number 3 signify your vote yes, and those opposed vote no. Okay, do we have any votes coming in by text?
We do. We have received 4 yes votes and 2 no votes.
Okay, so at this point in time, that means 4 yes votes would mean yes 77 and 34 no on this vote. So the chair rules that this resolution number 3 has passed. Okay, resolution number 4, please.
Bishop Ron Kastner has his hand raised, perhaps for a point of order.
Okay, Ron, do you have a point of order question?
Yeah, all of a sudden the votes seem to be higher than the number of people registered. I mean, 77 and 34 is like 111. And I thought we only had 105.
Bishop, may I answer how many are involved right now?
Please.
We have 138 participants at this time.
Oh.
The meeting was returned from the breakout sessions. There were less people. There are now more people participating in the meeting.
Okay. I thought we were fixated at 105. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Craig. And now I go to Brandon Birmingham.
Okay, we'll take up resolution number 4 now. This is the resolution sponsored by Vice Chancellor Sandra Corp. On behalf of the Resolutions Committee, I move adoption of resolution number 4. And I'm also available to clarify a question that I think came up by one of the delegates. So when we have discussion, I can address that point.
Okay, resolution number 4 is before you. And then do we have a person to give the short introduction to it other than what was just been given by Brandon Birmingham? Sandra, do you have that? Sandra Court, please.
Oh, let me see if she can unmute.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bishop. I'm now unmuted. There are several changes in here. I drafted most of them, but there are a few I didn't draft. Some of them are substantive and some are simply making changes to make the things mesh with other provisions. And so what I would like to do, because it could be a long discussion, if there are questions about things, I would be happy to address those. I would point out there were some changes made in specific, I'm sorry, I'm getting some noise. I don't know what that is. In the mission category, there were some changes that were made that particularly would point out as substantive to make that it agree with what is going on with parishes in section 31.2.1, that if a mission becomes self-sustaining, it will remain a mission of the diocese unless it applies to go back as to parish, or it will remain a mission unless it applies to become a parish. That basically being self-sustaining isn't an automatic change. Also talking about the ability in 31.2.5 to merge two missions into one at the request of the missions and with the approval of the standing committee and the bishop. And also that a mission like a parish would not now, if this is voted in, would not now be required to choose their junior warden from a member of the bishop's committee, since sometimes that's difficult to do in the smaller missions. And then other things, if people have specific questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Resolution number 4 is before you. Do we have any debate on this?
Bishop, I know there was some question on the amendment to section 1.1.3, which I've been asked to address. I think there was maybe some confusion that language restricts the right to seat, voice, and vote at convention to clergy only. That's not the case. What that's intended to do is to restrict those the rights to seat, voice, and vote to clergy of the Episcopal Church. There's a whole separate canon relating to lay delegates to convention, which this doesn't address at all. If you saw the whole section on convention laid out, you'd see it's very clear that this section is only talking about clergy eligibility. So there shouldn't be any implication here that section 1.1.3 is excluding lay delegates. Obviously, that wouldn't be the case, but I just wanted to explain that a little bit.
Thank you. Any person desiring to speak to this resolution, please? Okay. One, okay. Carol from St. Jude's, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, on the one about the junior warden, I think it just needs to be a little bit clarified a little bit better in terms of using its and its members. It still is a little unclear. I think it should say from the general membership or the entire church membership or something, because just using its again doesn't really clarify where that junior warden can come from.
Thank you. Yes. Quick question, Sandra. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop. Well, if you read the sentence as a whole, it would now say, the bishop's committee shall elect a junior warden from its members unless otherwise provided for by the mission bylaws. So that if a mission chooses, they could, by the structure of their bylaws, require that the junior warden be elected from their members. And it refers back to the subject of the sentence, which is the Bishops' Committee. So I think if somebody has a better way of writing it, I'll be glad to hear exactly what they want to change it to, but it's intended to refer back only to the Bishops' Committee.
Thank you. Carol? Okay, Carol, you're muted.
That would allow the small churches. So what you've done here is add the part that says otherwise provided. Is that what it is?
And we have stricken from among its members. That's the line that's through from among its members, intends to strike those words, because right now missions are required to elect a junior warden from among the members of the Bishops' Committee, which may be a small group of people, but parishes are not. So this is so this is just simply to change it to be commensurate with parishes, to allow the ability for the mission by its bylaws to adopt either practice.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Stupid way to put it. But...
Deanna Anderson, please.
Make it as unclear.
I'm looking at section 31.25, and I trust our Bishops' Committee totally, but I think there needs to be something about it has to be communicated back to the parishes or to the missions that they're looking at merging. I'm just concerned that that is lacking in that statement. This deals.
I guess that could be a motion to amend.
Okay, are you making a motion then to amend, Deanna?
Deanna is muted, Bishop.
Yes, I don't see her there, but if you wish to make an amendment to the motion, if you don't, then it stands.
Okay. On line 121, prior to the merger, the existing bishops' committees of the established missions shall communicate with their existing bishops or existing missions.
Probably with the members of the congregations.
Members of the congregation, and then go on to the standing committee.
Okay. That the amendment has been proposed. Do we have a second for the amendment? Okay, has there a second come in, please?
I have not received one. Oh, yes, there is one second received in the yes votes.
Okay, thank you. Then we now move to conversation about the amendment itself. Do we have any debate on the amendment itself? Okay, Canon Nestler, Mary June, Canon Nestler, do you speak to the amendment?
No, sir, I speak to the main motion.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone to on the amendment to speak to the amendment? Carol Marsh, Reverend Carol Marsh, are you speaking to the amendment? Carol, you're muted.
Actually, it's a point of clarification.
Hmm?
Could you read what the actual amendment, please?
Okay, that two or more missions may be merged into one at the request of either the bishop or the bishop's committee of each mission with consent of the bishop. The bishop shall decide whether to merge the missions with advice and consent of the standing committee. Where did we put that, Deanna? I lost where we put the line in that the bishop's committee shall inform the members of the congregations.
If I might, Bishop, this is Sandra. I think she asked that it be put in in the next sentence where you stopped reading in after prior to the merger.
Okay, after,
It would be prior to the merger, the existing bishops' committees of the established missions shall
okay.
consult with the congregation.
Well, shall inform the members of the congregations.
Is Bishop, is it consult or inform? Because there's a difference in that wording as to whether the congregation has a voice in this matter.
I think the intent of what I heard Deanna say was that they should inform the congregation.
Okay.
Maybe she needs to be unmuted so she could clarify.
Deanna, please unmute Deanna.
She should be unmuted.
Okay.
Somehow, I just think the congregation needs to be in the loop, and I didn't know where to put it, but it just concerns me that all of a sudden it's a done deal and they didn't know anything about it could occur.
Can I add one thing, Bishop?
Yes.
Part of this process, and of course this hasn't happened much, but part of the process for a merger of two congregations is in the bylaws, and the bylaws have to be approved by the congregational meetings of the respective entities. So one of the ways that the congregation would be involved, although it might not be as early as you would like, I grant that, is in the discussion of and the approval of the proposed bylaws of the consolidated congregation. So, but there you could require another kind of consultation. In the one that is active now, information that I have been given is that the conversation has been pretty vigorous in both congregations in the last couple of years leading up to this.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Jenny, the Reverend Jenny Tucker, are you speaking to the amendment? Yes, okay, thank you.
No, I actually have I think it's a point of privilege regarding what Steve Hutchinson just said. My understanding from St. Peter's and St. Michael's bylaws is that the only change to the bylaw that needs to be approved by the entire congregation is to the number of members on the bishops committee, but that other changes to the bylaws are approved by the bishops committee.
That would be very unusual. I haven't had a reason to look at those bylaws for a while.
I'll double check.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ron Kastner, Mr. Ron Kastner. Please unmute Ron.
Okay, is that better?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to speak against it, the proposed amendment, because it seems to me very strange that the bishops' committees would not be consulting with their congregants in the process of contemplating a merger. I mean, this is assuming that there's some sort of power grab going on by bishops' committees, and the bishop is going to be complicit in that. And I think that flies in the face of reality. And so I think it's unnecessary.
Okay, thank you. Do we have, what's the time on this? Have we exceeded our?
We have not, on the amendment, we have gone almost 6 minutes, Bishop.
Thank you.
We have 10 minutes left under my understanding. Is that right, Chancellor? That it's 16 minutes on the amendment?
16 minutes for the whole item. So amendment and the main motion, 16 minutes.
Okay, we're at 14 minutes and 13 seconds then at this point for the entire thing, Bishop. So got 2 minutes left, sir.
Do we have anyone else to speak to the amendment? Okay, seeing no hands being raised, then all in favor of the amendment signify by voting yes, and those opposed vote no. In favor of the amendment. Thank you. And Nick, do we have any coming in from chat or text?
I have received 3 yeses and 4 nos.
Okay, so that means yeses comprise 24 and nos comprise 80. So the amendment fails. Thank you. We now move back to the resolution itself. Resolution number 4 itself. Do we have any further conversation or debate on the resolution number 4? Okay, Canon Nestler.
Right, Reverend Sir, in lines 25 through 27, with the requirement that members of the laity be full communicant members according to the Episcopal canons. In some of our diocesan bodies, I'm thinking primarily of the council, we have persons who serve who are not Episcopalians. One of our congregations is overwhelmingly Lutheran membership of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. Is it the intent of these lines to apply to judge their service on our bodies by the definitions in the Episcopal canons of full communicant membership?
Thank you very much. I think that's a question of informational question. Sandra Corp, do you have a response to that?
Bishop, I don't think this was one that I wrote. And so, but my recollection of our discussions in the committee, I don't recall us saying that we were specifically trying to preclude individuals, or maybe we weren't even aware in the discussion of anyone that was serving on diocesan, on say the standing committee or diocesan council or any of those, that were not members, adult communicants in good standing. But maybe somebody else from our committee, maybe Brandon or Steve, can recall.
Bishop, our time has expired.
Okay, our time has expired on this. We can move to extend it by 5 minutes. Do we have a motion to extend debate by 5 minutes?
I believe David Egan Evans does.
Okay, do I have a second on that?
I'll move. Yeah.
Okay, a second to extend debate by 5 minutes?
Yes, we have received seconds, 5 of them.
Then all in favor of extending debate by 5 minutes, vote yes, or against, vote no. Okay, thank you. Nick, any comment by text?
6 yeses.
Okay, that's 81 yes, 22 no. So we extend debate by 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Okay, then we had, let me see.
Didn't the motion to extend debate fail?
No, it said it passed yes. There are more who voted yes.
I misunderstood the read.
Okay, now then, the Very Reverend Tyler Doherty.
Thanks, Bishop. No, my question was sort of along the lines of Mary June's question, going back to lines 5 and 6 of 1.1.3. In a parish that is shared between the Episcopal Church and, say, the ELCA, would that cleric have seat and voice at the convention or not? Because I think the way it's written now is that somebody like Jim Locke might not be able to be a delegate to convention. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, thank you. I think we need to clarify that question. In times past, that's information here. Jim Drury, for instance, served on council. He was also welcomed at convention and had seat, voice, and vote at convention as well.
If I could speak to that, Bishop?
Yes, please.
Um, there's a couple of different things. One, on terms of seat and voice at a convention, that is the prerogative of any given convention to grant seat and voice to specific, most often clergy serving in the diocese from other denominations. In terms of, which is different than putting it in the canons that they're entitled to it. So it leaves it to the convention to make that decision. And then but there is a difference between a cleric, for instance, a Lutheran cleric serving on one of our bodies as part of the service to the congregation and the acceptance of responsibilities to both the Rocky Mountain Synod and to the diocese as part of the canonical sort of terms for that kind of relationship. It is more dicey when you're talking about laity because they're not part of those obligations specifically and on accountability. So conceivably, you could have a layperson who's an active, and I'm not saying this to argue one way or another on the motion, but the curious thing is that a layperson could be on our diocesan council and on some similar governing body of the Rocky Mountain Synod at the same time. But and there's still no accountability really for the laity because we don't have a discipline of the laity canon. So there's no easy answer to it, but we've had this dialogue ever since we started having these relationships, primarily with the Lutherans, and who could participate and how in both realms.
Okay, so point of information then, please, because I think that is what's being is. Do these lines in this resolution therefore mean that a layperson could not serve in diocesan council? Let's say in the case of Ascension St. Matthew's, which is the joint, congregation ELCA and Episcopal, would that mean if this passes, then such a person could not serve on council?
That would be how I would interpret it, which is consistent with canons in other dioceses.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's see, Brandon Overton.
So I want to talk a little bit about 31.2.5. And the bishop shall decide whether to merge the missions with the advice and consent of the standing committee. Now, being part of a mission, and having a priest who is in charge of two missions at the same time, I want to be able to, if we were to merge, make the decision between our two missions and not have it be made by the standing committee and the bishop. So that's one area that I don't necessarily agree with in this aspect of it, because like I said, would rather it be done this between the two missions and not by the bishop and the standing committee.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bishop, the time has expired.
Okay, can we answer, but before we do that, I'd like to ask Steve Hutchinson to weigh in on that, because my reading of it does not indicate that the bishops committee have to initiate that to begin with, or need to be able to be in the mix of it from the very beginning. Steve?
Well, part of the issue is that at least in the last 35 years that I can speak to, I can't speak beyond that. There's really only been one or two instances where there's been an attempt or desire to merge congregations. And in the current case, of course, it arose from the economic and member number circumstances of the respective congregations, the viability of the congregations, and the discussions from the cleric in charge with the bishop and some wardens involved. So to say that the mix needs to have originated in any particular way, I'm not sure we would put that in a canon, but the application or the request for a merger, ultimately, however phrased, is a matter for the standing committee and the bishop, because under the canons, it's the standing committee and the bishop that accept any new congregation or change in status of a congregation. So inevitably, they need to be involved at the ultimate approval level. But the hard work of working out the working relationships, the logistics of services and participation of the members happens within the two respective congregations.
Okay, thank you. The time for debate is over at this point in time, so we're not going to take any more on the debate. However, may I ask a question once again, a point of personal privilege or order information to the chancellor? Is it appropriate for the bishop? And if it's not appropriate, please do say it's not appropriate, because I can take that. Is it appropriate for the bishop to be able to ask that this resolution be tabled to the next convention?
The whole resolution?
Yes, in order that, because I think the reason for it is I think there are certain aspects of it, specifically the service of members at Ascension St. Matthew's, for instance, where I would have, I think there needs to be some clarification on it. But the point of it is since the next convention comes up in the spring of 2021, it's not too far away. If it's not appropriate to make such a motion to table until time certain of that convention, then I will not do so.
Well, it's always in order to make a motion to table to the next convention. I mean, in terms of parliamentary rules, that's always a motion that's in order.
Okay, then I move to table this until the next convention.
Oh, died for lack of a second. Sorry.
We've received many seconds,
Okay.
and then there have been a number of hands raised as well, Bishop.
Okay, well, thank you for your support of your bishop. You don't know how much this warms my heart. Okay, so we have a second. I don't think we need to debate this. All in favor of tabling this resolution to the next convention, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. Do we have any coming in?
I've received 6 yes votes.
Okay, so that's 103 yes and 5 no. So the motion resolution has been tabled to the next convention. Thank you very much. Let us now move to the final resolution. We are approaching the end of our time, which would mean that we would, my understanding, or what I would say as the bishop, we would close this out after this resolution and then adjust the calendar for tomorrow to take up the rest of the business after the worship in the morning. I think we can manage that quite. So this is resolution number 5. Okay. Brandon?
Well, let's see if I can unmute him.
Okay, thanks. Bishop, resolution number 5 is actually the first one that we voted on this morning. That was the special rule. So that's already been addressed.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. My mistake. Okay, so resolution number 5 was brought at the very beginning in order that we could actually conduct business. Yes, I remember that. Thank you. All right, so that brings us then to the end of the resolutions. And it is, let me go back here, it is 11:56 at this moment in time. So I think it would, think, I think we ought to perhaps receive the report from Elaine Weiss, the trustee for the Perpetual Trust. And then I think we will adjourn for the day. And because with Zoom, you can only do so much, frankly.
And Bishop, please, if I may, we also have our regional meetings coming up too after this session.
Yes, and that's why I would move to stop the convention at this point in time in order that we could have that take place after the report of Elaine Weiss. Okay? All right.
Wonderful. I will pull up Elaine Weiss's report and we will watch it now.
Okay, thank you.
Years ago, the Perpetual Trust of St. Peter and St. Paul was established with 89 million in proceeds from the sale of St. Mark's Hospital. It was designed to support the diocese by providing a secure and stable source of funds to finance diocesan and parish operations and programs. From 1989 to 1994, the investments of the trust were limited to bonds and other fixed income securities, and only the interest income could be paid out. But the trustees determined that the investment portfolio needed to be diversified to generate higher returns, and we adopted a policy asset allocation to achieve that goal that is still in place to this day. Based on historical analysis, we determined that the maximum amount that could be paid out to the of a 48-month rolling average market value. When this was established, it seemed sound and prudent because the long-term returns on investment portfolios was about 9%. But today we're facing returns of 5 to 6%. We've talked about this with our financial advisors, other endowment funds, and we learned that we are way out of line with our peers. They're limiting distributions to 3 to 4% or even less. Now, the trust can't reduce the 5% distribution rate without the approval of the diocesan convention and the court. So in response to these concerns, the diocese has reduced the amount that it takes in operating distributions for the last 3 years and is expected to do so this year. For 2021, the maximum operating distribution has been calculated at about $3,175,000. This is about $180,000 less than in 2020. In 1998, the trust borrowed money under Project Jubilee to finance the capital construction, repair, and improvement needs of the diocese. This debt is secured solely by the securities held by the trust. No assets of the diocese or any parish are used as security for the Project Jubilee loans. Borrowing for Project Jubilee reached its peak in 2011 at $34.5 million. Since then, the trust has paid down $12 million, bringing the outstanding balance to $22.9 million. The trustees intend to continue to make periodic repayments of principal whenever market conditions permit. However, given the market this year, we do not believe that any principal payment can be made in 2020. As of midday, September 15th, the trust held approximately $68.2 million in assets. After a sharp decline in March, the market value of the trust has gradually increased, but is still about $2 million less than in December 2019. During this same period, the trust has paid out over $2 million in operating distribution and loan interest. From inception to the end of August this year, the trust will have paid out $176.3 million for the benefit of the diocese. Despite this cash drain, the trust has generated investment returns comparable to benchmark returns on similar portfolios. Year to date, as of August 31st, the trust had lost 1.1%. But for the 12 months ended August 31st, it had earned 6.56%. For July and August, there was a 6.85% return. But September has seen the markets be highly volatile and also in negative territory, so we may not see much of an improvement in the third quarter. As those of you who were at convention last year will recall, we discussed the trust's commitment to what is called impact or sustainability investment in environmental, social, and governance investment securities. At that time, we had about $2.2 million in targeted what's called ESG investments. This August, we made a major move, and as of today, we have 7.7 million, or 11.4% of the portfolio in social investment funds. In addition, 80% of the balance of the portfolio that are not targeted ESG funds have ESG ratings of average or above. So we feel we have made great progress and will continue to monitor the portfolio and available market securities to increase and maintain our commitment to ESG investment. Scott?
Elaine Weiss is still with us. Elaine, are you here?
I've just unmuted her.
Well, thank you. So at this point in time, before we break this and move into, then you'll have the regional meetings, and you should have the link for that. So Elaine is not answering, but what the question I was going to ask was, do I have any questions for Elaine? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone with questions. Oh, wait a minute. No one for questions with Elaine. So we thank Elaine Weiss for that report. So at this moment in time, then, what I will adjourn the convention for today, and then we'll pick up tomorrow at 9 a.m. for the worship. The presiding bishop will be, the sermon will be from the presiding bishop himself and a word to the church. I'll be at 9 a.m. Tomorrow morning. And then also you should have the links for those people who are in the Salt Lake region, the South, the Eastern and South region, and then the Southern region. And then you would move from there into that virtual meeting in order to elect your regional rep to diocesan council. Okay, so do I have any questions on that? And you should all have the links. Those should have been emailed out to you all in advance. And that was done, correct?
It was, and I can send a link in the chat right now so it's present for everybody. Just give me one moment.
Okay, while Nick is doing that, let me, I'll say to you, you know, we move forward on these conventions and plan them, and and time again in all of our planning discussion ahead of time, we are surprised. Many times what we expect there to be a great deal of conversation and debate on a resolution, nothing materializes. And then today we had a robust conversation and debate on the resolutions, which I find actually wonderful. So thank you all, because it shows your participation and your concern that the things that we do in this diocese would be done carefully and well, and that you are looking this over and your voices are so very important. So thank you for that. All right. Tom Fisk, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, Bishop. So I'm to understand, thank you. To understand that we go from here directly into our regional meetings. Okay, all right.
Thank you. Okay. All right, and let me see. I think at this point in time, we have
To easily find all the region meetings, I sent a link to a document in the chat. You may click on that and you'll be able to find which region you belong to.
okay.
All right.
So it's all there, and then you'll get the link to your respective regional meeting. All right. The northern region does not have a regional meeting because the person, Terry Chant Major from the North, continues on council. Okay. So with that, the Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. Most gracious and holy and loving God, we offer our thanks to you for the work you have set before us, but also, God, for the participation of the members of the Episcopal Diocese of Utah in this morning's session. I thank you for all the voices that were raised on the resolutions, for the debate, and for the gathering of the people. For though we are not meeting in person, to be able to be in this format and to see the faces of one another brings joy to me most certainly, and I believe to the rest of us. So thank you, O God, for that, and thank you for the ability to have such a meeting at all with the technology that we have available to us. We continue our prayers, O God, for our nation, for the world as we continue in this pandemic. We pray for and give thanks for the life of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And we express our thanks that you created such a person who could be a voice of reason in our nation. We pray once again for our nation in this time of great turmoil and division. Pray that we, your members of the Episcopal Church, would be healers and reconcilers. That we would, as followers of your Son Jesus, be able to bring that to our congregations, our communities in the nation, in order that we can see across differences, because what we see in one another is not a person who is different from us, but one who is marvelously made in your image. All this we ask through your Son, Jesus Christ, in whose name we pray. Amen. Okay. God bless you.